So remember when I said on our 2011 Avalanche, we'll put a link here, we did a case study on this 2011 Avalanche, as you see, this car. It was yesterday, it won't be yesterday for you guys, but it was a misfire, pretty straightforward diagnosis. It had some other faults, and one of them was a downstream O2 code. And I was like, well, to be 100%, you know, you really got to check powers and grounds, and you can do heater circuit stuff. And I was like, I'll just put a link in here for you guys. And yeah, I told Pete to just change the sensor, and of course, it didn't fix it. So we should never change a part based on a code. It doesn't matter how many times we've done it. And I have to really put a number to this. It's probably 9.5, maybe higher, 9.8 times out of 10, you got a downstream O2 sensor heater circuit fault, you need a sensor. But we still have to check it. Why? Because we don't want to have comebacks. And I had Pete put a sensor in this, and the check engine light immediately lights for a O2 heater fault. At least that's what he told me. That's where we are. We changed the part based on a code, and that was stupid. That's all the stuff I preach all the time. Why would I even suggest that? I know why. I didn't want to crawl in the driveway on gravel underneath the car to do my checks. I'm older, and I like to think wiser. But in this case, that wasn't so wise. We got a jack stand under this. We're on the concrete now. I can get to the sensor. We're gonna do the checks that we should have done. Let's get started. First thing we're gonna look at here, guys, is the codes. Pete said this code came immediately back. O2 heater control circuit bank 1 sensor 2. O2 heater resistance bank 1 sensor 2. Let me clear these. Clear, and then we'll reread them. Make sure they're gone. They are. Start the truck. Did he lie to me? The check engine light's off. He said it was a hard fault and the light came right back on. Oh, there it is. Okay, good. The light didn't come back on yet, but there's the code. 1-2 heater circuit fault. All right, so one of the things is, did Pete change the right sensor? I told him downstream, number 1 cylinder side, which is this side, and I crawled underneath and looked. It is the right sensor. A warning to you guys on the 1-2 sensor, which is a downstream behind the cat. Sometimes the 1-2 can be in front of the cat, and they'll have 3 sensors. They'll have a 1-1, then they'll have a 1-2, which is in front of the cat, and then a 1-3, which is behind the cat, and the 2 and 3 sensors work to monitor the cat. Some systems have that, so we have to look at this exhaust and make sure that Pete didn't inadvertently change a 1-3 sensor. I didn't see data on the scan tool for a 1-3, so that's one way you can tell. The other one is visual inspections. Visual inspection, location of the sensor, scan data, we can identify that. That being aside, let's do our checks on this 1-2 outside of that visual inspection. I'm gonna be right here on this connector here. I can undo it. Let me see how much room I have here. Oh, come on, Pete. There's a broken wire right there.
Where's it at?
Right there. The wire's broken. That right there, guys, is why you do not change a part based on a code. And I'm not gonna fault Pete on that, because when you get in your 50s, like me and him, if you don't have your readers on, you're not gonna see that. You see my face? Look what I have on. My readers. I need that to see that. But that wire's damaged. So what are we gonna see when we measure this? The 2 white wires. Can you see the 2 whites right here on the sensor side? 2 white wires. You're gonna see this is a power fed ground side switch circuit, as we notated with the diagram yesterday. Caleb, you can pull the footage in for the diagram for this O2, and when I talked about it. Bank 1, sensor 2, looks like ground side switched heater circuit. So the gray orange, that wire right there, computer switching the ground of that heater. And then the pink wire, you see it's shared with the 2-2. The pink wire, the heater circuit's this side of the sensor. That's what we're looking at. Pink wire, where's it go? Yeah, so it has its own designated fuse for the downstream sensors. This is just gonna be your standard checks at the sensor making sure you have 12 volts right at the connector on pin D, and then looking for a 0 volt signal on the gray white, which would be the computer's ground of that sensor. Sometimes these are pulse width modulated. Yeah, that's a power feed. That pink wire is the power feed. And you know, one of the whites down here is gonna be your feed, the other is gonna be your ground for your heater circuit. That's standard sensor side colors. I'm just gonna use the digital meter for everyone, because these are the checks that you need to do. We gotta make sure that ground is good. And I'll generally go after the power feed first to do that. When at all possible, when in doubt, run a wire from the battery. I brought my power probe for that reason, in case we needed to. It looks like, yeah, pink wire is on this side, so I'll hit this one. That should be my power feed. And I know we can see the damage here, but this is standard practice, guys. You gotta get used to this. So 120 volts, 120 millivolts, sorry. I had like 200 there for a second. Don't like that ground. 117. I have the key on. Pete, can you reach in and start this for me?
Yeah.
All heater checks. Do it with the engine running. Some of these, they're not going to have power unless it's running. I think. Yeah, nothing. Obviously. But that nothing could still be my ground here. Could be my connection here. We know in our case it's not. Let me just get an accurate reading here. Now let me touch the crud. That's almost broken all the way. Got 129 millivolts on that power feed. And then this would be my sensor ground circuit. That is a grounded circuit by the computer. Should be 100 millivolts or less, maybe 200 millivolts or less on a O2 sensor ground, because there's current flow on these, about a 1 amp circuit. So you'll be higher than a sensor ground will be for the heater. But this should be the power feed. And you see that power feed is missing. Let's wiggle my ground connection, make sure we're good. Yeah, no power. So in that case, we see a problem here. But what you would do, in this case, being that a fuse is shared with two sensors, we're not really worried about the fuse, but we start doing visual inspections on the harness. You start looking for contact points. And in this case, this looks like either maybe a stone came up and hit that, or somebody did some checks on this down the road and did a little hokey pokey and never sealed it up. There you go, it just broke as soon as I touched it. You see that? Let me move this tape out of the way. O2 heater, 14 volts. The purple wire looks a little pinched too. We might have to address that as well. Somebody commented, for the love of God, get a heat gun. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. This works. Reason we don't use heat guns for what we do being mobile is we don't always have an outlet. I mean, maybe a butane heat gun, right? This is the adhesive lined crimp connectors. These are the good ones. Let's see this purple one. Yeah, somebody looks like that looks like a hokey pokey, man. Look at that.
It does.
Somebody poked that.
It's like a pinhole.
That purple one, I believe, let's see which one that is. Purple turn, that's the signal wire for the O2 on this. This is why if you're gonna do the hokey pokey, you don't do it like this. And you gotta seal it up when you're done, man, especially down like in this really, really wet environment down here. So that one's at least not corroded, just the insulation's damaged. A little bit of liquid tape on that is gonna be the way we'll go with that one. And yeah, let's do our final checks here for the heater. What I wanna do is power and ground test again. Show you guys what you wanna see. We'll do a current measurement too. Starting it up, Caleb. Heater power. 13.9 volts. 14.2, looks like my ground a little bit. 14.3. And then our sensor ground, our heater ground, not sensor ground, heater ground. See what we get. See it fluctuating? That's gonna be a pulse width modulated heater. That's why it looks like that. Could be very misleading if you didn't know that that was a pulse width modulated circuit. Let me get out of here. I'll show you the pulsing on the lab scope. There you go. And then let's get the digital voltage signal. There's your average. You see it's changing as the pulse width is changing. The overall average, see that live average is showing between 2 and 5 volts. You see as the pulse width changes, and that's just downstream heater controls, man. If you didn't have a lab scope and you were looking at your sensor ground voltage at 6 volts, you'd say, oh, I got a bad sensor ground. No, you don't. This is a pulse width modulated circuit. Okay, one other check you can do. We'll do them both together. We're gonna do amperage. I'm gonna put a second channel on here just so we can see the pulsing and the amperage at the same time. And then also if it ends up shutting it off, we'll know. Sometimes these downstream heater circuits will shut off. And these are generally around 1 amp of current, but being that this is being pulsed, it's gonna be a little bit lower than that. Just clipping around the power wire. Yellow trace is my voltage. Green trace is my amperage. Let's pause that. The low portion is where it's being turned on. The high portion's where it's being turned off. It's ground side switched. Chapter 3 material, if you're interested. Fundamentals here, guys. So as we pull it to ground, our amperage is gonna rise, and that's what you're seeing. So as amperage is high, when voltage is low, that's a ground side switch circuit. That's your measurement in there. And we're talking 1.18 amps, right down there, that number. 1.18 amps and a voltage of 0.1. So when it's fully grounded, we're reading 0.1 of a volt and 1.18 amps. Simple heater circuit checks, simple stuff that should have been done. And I rolled the dice and told Pete to put a sensor in it. And I'm paying the price for that because we're here today, but I'm actually happy we did that because we get a good case study out of it. Still got to liquid tape that purple wire, and then we'll be good to go. Let's go up top and do a final talk here. All right, final thing, scan data. Shut this off, turn the key on. Let's clear these faults out of here. Codes are cleared. Fire in the hole. We don't want to see anything come back. Pete, did you change the oil in this too?
Yes, sir.
Continuation from our last video. If you haven't seen it, from our last video on this, we had a fuel trim issue that I said we weren't going to address because of purge issues with the misfire and then also fuel contaminated oil. I had Pete change the oil. I still don't think it had enough runtime. I still think this needs to be driven, and we have a saturated canister. But let's take a look at what our trim numbers look like. No codes, we're good on that front. Oh, it's much better. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is why you don't immediately attack a negative trim issue when you had a misfire. And we know that this thing was misfiring for a long time based on what the plug looked like, right? That plug was just coated in crud. That doesn't happen overnight. This was driven a long time with a misfire. You drive a car with for a long time with a misfire, and we saw the strategy with the canister purge, and I don't know how much I want to talk about that. Watch part 1, we talked about this trim issue. We were like minus 18. Maybe I spoke too soon. I just went to minus 16. That would be from the purge valve turning back on what we saw in video number 1. And with the purge valve on, we were minus 18, but this is one. This needs to be driven. That kind of ruined my point with that trim going back negative again. My point was when you make major corrections like a misfire like we had, change the oil, drive it before you go attacking a negative trim number that we're looking at here. There could still be another problem, but in video 1, I'm pretty certain we were able to show how badly it was when the purge valve turned on. Something else on this too. I have a fuel alcohol content of 17% that is most likely inaccurate for this. These are known for miscalculating percentage. So with a 17% alcohol percentage, this is going to be adding more fuel than it should be. They don't run flex fuel in this, do they? So all of that is now like, this is the hard part about troubleshooting live. You're looking at data live, you're trying to process it out loud, thinking about it, trying to share that with you, and everything that I just said is accurate, but the but is there's still a problem here. And I didn't want to attack the fuel trim because of what we saw with the purge, but I'm also saying stuff about that purge that I'm unsure of, which is the strategy of the purge when you have a constant misfire. I don't know what the computer is going to do. I did see, and we saw with the purge valve on, a huge difference in trim, but I don't like this. I don't like this alcohol number. I'm going to reset it. Customer does not run E85. It's showing 17%. Hang on a second. Let me just prove my point here. I'm talking in circles. Some of you guys are possibly lost because we covered some of this in part 1. So I have the purge up there. Watch this. Shut it off. Wait. Watch short terms. As soon as this goes into closed loop, our short terms will start correcting. So that guy there and that guy there. And then watch our purge and then watch our long terms. All right, we just went into closed loop as indicated by the short term moving. Those trims look good. -8, -9. I'm good with that. Everything I was telling you guys was like, oh, you know, oil change was a big deal and don't attack a rich condition until you're sure and you drive it, reset things. But watch as soon as this purge valve turns on, pulling fuel out of the charcoal canister. So -9, I wouldn't sweat a -9. As soon as it started purging, 12%, what we do? Immediately go to -20. So I'll ask you guys, strategy on the GM, constant misfire. Does the computer disable the purge valve during a dead hard misfire? I'll leave that to you guys to answer that question. I don't know. That's what I was assuming watching these numbers. I wasn't going to touch it. And then I scrolled and I saw alcohol percentage and I'm like, wait a minute, 17%. These get aggravated by short trips and short fill-ups. It's a system that learns the alcohol content after you fill the tank. We're going to reset that. I don't like 17% on a car that doesn't run it. So we go to functional tests, fuel composition reset. Yeah, this is what we needed on that Jeep. I needed a button that said yes. Reset. Now we go back. Let's check it. And let's get our purge back in there. Nice. We're down to 3%. Now let's watch this now. We'll watch both purge and non-purge. Looks like that reset the trims too, because my memory's gone. We just went into closed loop. Long term's got to learn now. Oh, it's so much better. Short term, long term fuel trim can be confusing if you don't know about it. We have some videos right here on YouTube addressing this. I also have a bunch of classes on SD Premium where I'm with my classroom in a class environment. We recorded all of that at Rosedale Technical College. That is available to you guys if you're interested in learning more about this. Number one job of the short term is to correct for the O2. Number one job of the long term is to bring the short term at 0. Those are some two truths that have held the test of time. And man, do those numbers look really, really good right now. Now we'll wait for the purge valve to turn on to see what the actual correction factor is there. We were at 20% before. We were like, call it 10% non-purge, 20% with purge. Right now, without purge, we're looking at, you got to add these two together, maybe a -4 on the long term. So right off the bat, we had a 6-7% correction without the purge. Let's see what it is when the purge valve turns on. There we go. Purge valve is on. Just let this learn. We're already showing an improvement here. I'm at -12 and -13 with a 15% purge. I'd have to go back and look at those numbers to see the correlation between purge percentage and then trims. There's a 17% purge now. Yeah, 12 and 13. I believe it's going to be fine, but I'd love to hear your comments again on the purge. What's the word I'm looking for? The strategy behind the purge valve and a constant miss. Some good stuff in this. It's tough sometimes troubleshooting live, and sometimes we run in circles especially when I'm trying to explain what I'm doing as I'm thinking through the process. So but I hope you guys like that. Do your checks. Don't change parts based on a fault code. As you saw, damaged wire, it doesn't matter how many times you've done it, you still got to do your checks. And so yeah, it's not as simple, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. Just hooking up a scan tool, you see a code, change a part. Yeah, you might have gotten away with it. In this case, 9 times out of 10 with a downstream O2 heater fault. But that one time, it's going to burn you. Do your checks, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.